Ciphers of Time, Awakening the Legacy. Chapter 16, The Mighty Stone Bearer. The walls of the cavernous chamber echoed with the guttural roar of Guruji's fury. Coarse, violent breaths escaped his lips as he glared at Vishwa with eyes that burned like embers of a wrathful fire. An aura of power and anger radiated from his being, filling the air with a palpable tension that seemed to make the very stones beneath them shudder. Useless! His voice boomed, an outburst that reverberated off the jagged rock faces surrounding them. Incompetent! You have failed me! Vishwa, who had been standing with a semblance of stoic resolve, now felt every muscle in his body tense under Guruji's scathing gaze. He bowed his head slightly, unable to meet the fiery eyes that seemed to sear into his very soul. Guruji's hands trembled with unrestrained fury as they reached for his torso, where bandages marked with the evidence of countless battles clung tightly to his body. With a violent energy that hinted at years of repressed pain, he ripped at the bindings, tearing them apart from the skin they had been hiding. Vishwa gazed upon the warrior's scarred and weathered body, bearing wounds that were centuries old. The smell of decay permeated the air, a putrid mix of pus and blood emanating from his unhealed lesions. It was as though the injuries themselves were weeping in agony at being forever trapped on his skin. Vishwa's stomach churned as he glimpsed the horror of Guruji's cursed existence. The sight was abhorrent, almost beyond comprehension. The proud flesh of a legendary fighter reduced to a festering tableau of never-ending pain. It was more than just visually repulsive. It was a testament to a divine punishment, a physical manifestation of a celestial wrath that defied time itself. "Look at me, Vishwa," Guruji commanded, but it was a demand that went unanswered. Vishwa could not bring himself to gaze upon the grotesque spectacle, to witness the depth of suffering etched into every lesion that covered the immortal's body. Guruji spat, his voice laced with venom and grief. This abomination I am forced to endure. And for what? Your failure?" The sound of torn bandages fluttering to the stone floor punctuated the silence that followed. Vishwa's knees pressed hard against the cold, unforgiving floor, his head bowed as if in surrender to a fate he could no longer escape. Guruji towered over him, in one swift movement fueled by centuries of pent-up anger. He grabbed hold of Vishwa's hair with an unrelenting grip that caused the roots to cry out in torment. "Keep your eyes on me," he ordered with a voice as sharp as a blade. Vishwa's scalp burned as he was forced upward, his gaze still averted, knowing that what lay before him was a sight not meant for mortal eyes. A cursed visage that bore the scars of divine retribution. "Open your eyes, Vishwa," Guruji ordered, his voice a low growl resonating with the power of his immortal lineage. It was not a request, but a decree from one who had commanded armies and defied gods. Guruji began to unwind the bandage that encircled his head, the fabric stained with the essence of an undying wound. The bandage unfurled like the slow revelation of a macabre secret, a tale of battles lost and a life sentence to perpetual suffering. As the last of the cloth slipped away, it revealed the core of Guruji's torment, a lesion upon his brow, ghastly in its raw exposure. Blood and pus seeped from the edges where once had sat a jewel of immeasurable power, torn from its seat as both crown and curse. Vishwa's breath caught, torn between revulsion and pity. On Guruji's forehead lay a gaping wound, a reminder of a glory violently torn away. It was a chasm no time or medicine could heal. The sight clawed at Vishwa's heart, forcing him to confront the magnitude of the immortal's affliction and his own role in perpetuating it. "What do you feel looking at me, Vishwa?" he bellowed, his eyes blazing with a fire that eclipsed the centuries of his existence. "You can't even dare to look at my form and smell me. Yet I have been bearing this body for eons. And now you have the audacity to drag me to this forsaken place for nothing? Have you forgotten who I am?" His fingers clenched into fists, trembling with suppressed wrath. "Don't let my current state deceive you. I will make sure this world doesn't forget who I am." Vishwa, head bowed in a mix of fear and shame, felt the weight of Guruji's gaze like shackles around his neck. Born in the most superior family, Guruji's voice cracked with the pain of memories long buried, yet never forgotten. The son of the greatest guru in the world, raised with extraordinary skills, blessed with immortality. His chest heaved as he recounted his tale, each word laced with bitterness. I fought in great wars, my power unmatched by any, yet I lost my father to a cheap trap set by enemies. The fury building within him erupted, and he stood abruptly, his arms flung wide as if embracing the torment of his past. Is it wrong to be loyal to one's king? I took an oath to eradicate every last enemy and their heirs for my king. Is that wrong? His voice escalated to a roar that seemed to shake the very foundation of the ashram. What did I do to deserve this? Always by my king's side, always seeking to fight and destroy our enemies. Then why? Why was I cursed? Why was my stone cruelly ripped from me? Tears mingled with the pus and blood on his face, yet they did nothing to quench the fire in his eyes. Why am I leading this disgusting life, when once I was the mightiest warrior of all time? Guruji's scream tore through the silence, agony and disgust intertwining as he threw his head back and shouted to the heavens, challenging both gods and fate with the ferocity of his despair. His wounds wept openly as though his body grieved with him, mourning the loss of a dignity that had once been untouchable. Vishwa, still kneeling, could only witness the tragedy of a legend reduced to mortal suffering, his heart heavy with the knowledge that he had somehow contributed to this timeless warrior's descent into anguish. Back at Kripa's camp, he started recounting history stained with blood and treachery to Manu and Shantanu. Before I could explain to you the current situation, you must understand what occurred in my era when I served as the teacher to the Kauravas and Pandavas. In the dim glow of the oil lamps that flickered against the temple walls, the shadows seemed to listen, lending an eerie weight to his words. We were amidst Hastinapura's grandeur, under the rule of King Dhritarashtra. My sister Kripi's husband, Dronacharya, was appointed royal preceptor for his mastery in military arts, including the use of divine weapons known as astras. Together they bore a son, Ashwathama, marked from birth with a celestial gem upon his forehead. This gem conferred upon him dominion over all beings inferior to man, shielding him from the ravages of hunger, thirst, weariness, age, disease, weaponry, and even the gods themselves. As you might know, King Dhritarashtra had 100 sons, famously known as the Kauravas. His brother's 2 widows and their 5 sons, known as the Pandavas, also lived in the royal premises. A pensive sigh escaped Kripacharya, his eyes reflecting the flames as if they burned within his soul. Under Drona's tutelage, alongside the Kauravas and Pandavas, Ashwathama grew into an invincible warrior, unwavering in his loyalty. Yet, he continued, his voice dropping to a murmur laced with sorrow, discord festered between the cousins, culminating in the infamous Kurukshetra war. 18 days it raged, with Duryodhana leading the Kauravas and Yudhishthira the Pandavas. In the end, the Kauravas fell. More than 1 billion people were killed in that war. Royal Guru Drona was among those killed. Upon discovering the circumstances and deceit that led to his father's demise, Ashwathama's wrath knew no bounds. He created a havoc in the warfield and fought ruthlessly. Kripacharya closed his eyes as if the very memory pained him. But it was not enough for vengeance. On learning of Duryodhana's defeat, Ashwathama vowed to extinguish the Pandava lineage. Under the cloak of night, he struck down their heirs as they slept. The Pandava bloodline lay in ruins, with every heir mercilessly slaughtered, except for one unborn child hidden within Uttara's womb. Kripa continued. Driven to madness by his oath to Duryodhana, Ashwathama unleashed the deadly Brahmastra weapon towards the unborn child, his dark intentions veiled by a twisted sense of duty. As the powerful weapon hurtled towards its target, Lord Krishna himself had to intervene, desperately trying to halt its destructive path before it reached its innocent victim. The Pandavas seized him, driven by rage and grief, but they could not bring themselves to kill him, for he was the son of their beloved guru, whom they revered above all else. Instead, they poured all their fury and wrath into devising a punishment that would make Ashwathama suffer for eternity. Captured, humiliated, and stripped of his divine jewel, Ashwathama is left vulnerable and powerless. The humiliation burns like a brand on his soul, searing through every fiber of his being. He can feel the weight of defeat pressing down on his chest, crushing him with its heavy hand. And for his transgressions, Krishna cursed him. His wounds would forever bleed, never finding solace or healing. The silence following Kripacharya's tale was thick with the weight of centuries. Shantanu, who had stood motionless throughout the narration, finally found his voice, its timbre betraying a mix of awe and apprehension. So Ashwathama is your nephew, and he is immortal. Is he around here? Are you trying to aid him with the powers we've uncovered? In the semi-darkness, Kripacharya remained stoic, his expression unreadable, yet his silence spoke volumes. Kripa's head shifted subtly from side to side, a clear horizontal motion that dispelled the cloud of suspicion in one silent gesture. Shantanu's question about Ashwathama lingered momentarily before dissolving into the charged air. Manu, who had been parsing every nuance, every flicker across Kripa's lined face, found himself caught in the gravity of revelation. His voice, when it emerged, carried a weight that matched the solemnity of their surroundings. You mean the stone we were after, on the instructions of Vishwa, is the very stone etched from Ashwathama's forehead? It wasn't just a question, but a realization dawning upon him, connecting dots across millennia to form an image he could scarcely believe. His academic pursuits into the Mahabharata war had always been driven by a hunger for knowledge, a desire to peel back layers of myth and find the kernels of truth within. But standing here, in the presence of Kripa, the lines between legend and reality blurred, and the stories he once pored over in text now seemed to pulse with life around him. Kripa's eyes held Manu's gaze steadily, an ocean of history swirling within their depths. There was no need for confirmation. The understanding passed between them, a shared acceptance of a past that refused to remain buried. Kripa's nod was subtle, yet it sent ripples in the surrounding silence. Yes, the affirmation hung in the air, as heavy and palpable as the damp stone beneath their feet. Manu's heart raced, his mind struggling to keep up with the revelations unfolding before him. He felt the weight of centuries colliding with the present, a confluence of time that threatened to sweep him away. His fingers brushed against the cool wall for support, the reality of the situation pressing against him as firmly as the rock against his skin. Unbelievable, he murmured, almost to himself. The Indian mythology that had always been a distant echo. From childhood stories, the verses chanted in rituals, whose meanings were half understood, now surged around him, alive and demanding attention. The proof wasn't just in Kripa's nod or in the ethereal atmosphere of their surroundings. It was in the very existence of the man, no, the immortal, before him. As if sensing Manu's inner turmoil, Kripa remained silent, allowing the truth to settle around them like dust after a storm. The realization that another immortal walked among them, possibly plotting from the shadows of this very labyrinth, added a layer of urgency to Manu's thoughts. He glanced at Shantanu, who stood motionless, his eyes reflecting a battle between skepticism and acceptance. Why us? He asked, his voice barely rising above a whisper, yet laden with a world's worth of frustration. Manu, Kripa spoke, his tone imbued with a calm that seemed out of place yet desperately needed. You brothers are not alone. He stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on Manu's shoulder, its weight surprisingly comforting. We are here to help you. A momentary pause allowed the gravity of his words to sink in, and then he continued, Hold your breath. Let us take it in slow. It has already been a tiring day. Kripa's voice was gentle, a subtle command woven into the fabric of his counsel. Take some rest. All the pieces will come into place at the right time. Shantanu was still trying to make sense of everything, while Manu struggled to fully comprehend the situation. Malini had been staring at Shantanu during all this time without ever looking away. The brothers were offered comfortable living arrangements and were advised not to leave the premises. They were reassured that every member of this group was dedicated to protecting them, allowing them to sleep peacefully without worry.